Hi, everybody. I love that wave feature. Everyone's always waving. Wish I had that in real life. Yo, what's up?
Lee, there is a real waves feature.
I
You can do it in real life.
I do it, but
You
with like
can.
wearing rubber gloves, I just don't want to do it to everybody. I don't want to scare people.
Hi.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how are ya?
I am well. I mean, it is like terrible weather out here in New York, and unlike, are you? I assume you're in LA.
I'm in Oregon, Lee. I moved to Oregon.
What? When
Yeah,
did this happen?
at Christmas,
No kidding.
I figured, what is the easiest, cheapest, least stressful time to move? The holidays.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I
I
mean, why
packed
not?
up. Yeah, so I packed up. I moved during the holidays, and it's raining where I am too, but it's beautiful. It's springtime, so we're happy.
Love me some Pacific Northwest, Oregon. Are you in Portland or are you elsewhere?
Yeah, Portland. Right now, just outside of Portland, at a relative's house. But Portland is where I'm going to be based. So if you ever want to have a good beer, good coffee, and good eats, come on over.
I do. I am a big fan of Portland. I did an event there last year with my friend Colin, who lives there. Great town, and you guys are gonna love it. So what is going on? It's been a while since we've seen each other, and
It has.
why don't you kind of give a little background on you guys? By the way, this is Rachel Redwall, for those of you who don't know, and she's awesome. We did a commercial together, I guess, about 5 years ago, and that's when we first met, even though I knew of you before then. But I'll let you tell people about yourself, and then we'll get into some stuff.
Before I talk about myself, I think everyone will like this story. So, everyone who's tuning in today is probably familiar with Lee. I knew of him and we had communicated online, like you guys do with his content, right? And we found out that we were on this commercial shoot together for an app that we both love called Trip It, which is a travel planning app. And afterward, we're like, let's grab a drink. I don't know if you remember this,
I
Lee.
do.
So we get a drink and then we go our separate ways. And I was like, Lee, afterward, I had a blueberry in my tooth the whole time that we were having a drink. I got a drink with a muddled berry. And he was like, it was endearing. And since then, we've been tight. So anybody who's ever gotten food stuck in your teeth, Lee does not have your back. But you and I,
I mean,
wow.
I probably could have told you, but like it was kind of hiding. It wasn't like glaring.
Like it's like a whole muddled blueberry. A bit about me: I work in travel, like Lee does. I'm a travel storyteller. The responsibilities vary by day. Some days I'm shooting photography or writing articles for publications. Some days I'm producing and doing camera work on TV shows. Sometimes I'm hosting the TV shows. If there is a story that connects the world to you, I'm on it. I'm interested in making the world more accessible to people, more exciting, and also less scary.
Mm,
So there's a lot of stuff out there that tells us to be afraid of the things that we're not familiar with. My goal is to get you really stoked to be a part of this world.
yeah. One of my favorite things about Rachel is she's like one of the more positive people I've ever met. That's you meet her for a second and like you're just like, wow. You think she's kidding, but that's actually how she is. She's like really that like positive and nice and all that, and it's really refreshing. Yeah, so it's a pleasure to have you. So now you have been nominated for an Emmy before, right?
I have, yeah. So that was for shooting a show for PBS. If you're in the States, you're probably familiar. It's public broadcasting, but overseas, it's the channel that everyone would have access to on their TV if they're not paying for like the fancy subscriptions.
Right.
I was shooting a TV show that was different adventures around the Western US,
Mhm.
and I was the director of photography on it, which means you're heading up the camera department on the show.
Awesome. And Angel, our friend, has called you the real deal Holyfield, which I totally agree with, and Nancy Brown as well.
Hi,
That's awesome.
Nancy. Hi, Angel.
All right, so you've done that. You do on camera stuff, you do behind the scenes stuff, and you've had like TV shows, right? Like at least two, right?
Yeah, so I had my own show on Travel Channel. I
Hmm.
had my own show on HLN. I have hosted and co-hosted and done guest segments on other talk shows.
Hmm.
So the probably the weirdest for me, but also one of the more fun ones was I guest co-hosted this talk show called Fab Life Show. Fab Life was on ABC. And do you know who Chrissy Teigen is?
I mean, I know of her. I can't pinpoint her, but I've heard of the name.
She's beautiful. She's like a supermodel turned actress. She's the wife of John Legend,
Oh
but
yeah,
has
yeah,
her
yeah, yeah,
has
yeah.
very
Okay.
much her own thing going. So she was one of the hosts of the show,
She's funny.
and
She talks a lot. She's like really opinionated.
she's
Yeah.
super funny.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you ever see somebody doing like Trump takedowns on Twitter, she's got some burns. So
yeah.
she was out for maternity leave, and I filled in for her
That's
on
cool.
her talk show. I didn't know. I was like, "Where's Chrissy today?" I wanted to get a picture for my husband Todd. I was like, "Todd, I got you." And I showed up, and they're like, "You're her fill-in. She's not here," which was
Oh,
pretty neat.
that's pretty cool. I
Yeah.
should ask her to come on Instagram Live. We'll talk about that.
And Angel says my wife talks about her like they're BFFs. Everyone, if you don't know who Chrissy Teigen is, if you were to look at her content, follow her work, you will feel like you're besties. She just has that capacity.
Is John Legend's real name John Legend? Is that really his last name? Because he's kind of a legend, so it would be
He
apropos.
is. Yeah, I don't know. He's from Ohio. I know
Yeah.
that. I'm from Ohio, so we look for any home state pride we can find, you know? Like, yes, we invented flight, but also John Legend.
I feel like he's won like Oscars and like Grammys and like Tonys and like every.
Yeah,
I
isn't
feel
it
like
the
he's like,
EGAD? Is that what
yeah,
they
yeah,
call
yeah.
it? The Emmy, Grammy, Academy Award. What's the D?
Wait, Tony, isn't it EGAT like Tony's?
Oh, EGAT.
Yeah, yeah,
EGAT is an exclamation like Irma Gurn.
yeah. That's my pop culture knowledge of the day. Like that's all I got. That's my maximum right there. I don't know anything about actors and stuff.
You did
so,
it.
so you know, we have a million things we could talk about, but dude, I saw your post. You know, I guess it was about 10 days ago now, something like that, and I like read that and I was like blown away. I had no idea, and then I hadn't talked to you in a while. So you know, as soon as I read it, I messaged you, and you know, your story is unbelievable, but it's not that unbelievable given what's the madness that's happening right now. But why don't you tell people like kind of like what happened, because I would have lost my fucking mind if I went through what you went through.
For point of reference, Lee is talking about the fact that, yeah, about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now, I published a story about how I had COVID-19. And I shared as detailed of an account as I could without feeling like I was fear-mongering. I wanted to be transparent without making people feel like I was like, woe is me. I just did everything in my power to share the perspective of one person who's experienced this virus and make it accessible, because lots of people I know, whether they're taking social distancing seriously or not, most of them are, they don't know somebody personally who's been affected by the virus. And so it's really hard for us as humans to conceptualize something that we're completely unfamiliar with. And also if it feels like it's an invisible threat. So my experience was this. I went to the East Coast from where I am in Oregon. For those of you joining, I'm Rachel, and I'm in Portland, Oregon. I flew to New York to speak at a conference, and then to South Carolina to shoot photography and video assets and write articles for a magazine that I'm an ambassador for. And everything went well. Things were good. This was in early March. So I was on the East Coast the 6th through the 12th-ish. Right. And this was a time where any of you in Europe, you're already familiar that Italy was locking down and certain countries were starting to lock down regions, but we weren't in the US because the pandemic had.
Yeah, we got
was like, are you in
there? You're back.
So the pandemic hadn't reached the US in ways that we were feeling were worth taking seriously yet. That doesn't mean the experts weren't. Lots of regional leaders were. But as a nation, we were still open for business. So my contracts went ahead. I was in New York. All the hand sanitizer and TP were gone, but people aren't really changing their behavior.
Still is, by the way. Still is.
Yeah. Hasn't been replenished. So long and short of it, I got home from my assignment. I had decided that I wasn't going to be traveling moving forward until we knew more, until it seemed safe. I'm not one to live in fear or cancel trips just cause, but I canceled all forthcoming trips, including a return trip to New York, and was like, I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to shelter in place with my husband in case I brought any germs home, just in case. I figured, and this is part of kind of public mythology at this point. I don't want you to get trapped in this thinking. I figured I'm young. I'm not immunocompromised. I'm really active. So if I got sick, I'd probably be fine. However, I did not want to be the reason that somebody else got sick. Within 2 days of deciding that we were just going to stay put, I started to have symptoms that I attributed to post-travel fatigue. I was like, no, I'm probably dehydrated, which is why my head hurts. Probably carrying all that camera gear and doing a kayaking shoot with the gear is why my body aches.
Yep.
About 4 days after that, the symptoms really took a nosedive. And if you've read the post, you know this story already, so feel free to like la 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 if you don't want to hear all the nitty gritty.
Want to hear?
Around day 4 or 5, the body aches were really severe, and then came down with a really bad temperature. So I had a fever of 102 Fahrenheit for 7 days.
Oh my God.
And everything that happens when you have a fever feels magnified. Your body is using a lot of resources when you're that sick. So I had the body aches, I had the chills, the night sweats, the gastrointestinal stuff, the cough that everyone talks about, which was coupled with the body aches and the fever severe enough that I couldn't do anything. I mean, if I sat up, I would cough too hard or my body would hurt too badly. If I tried to move, I tried to talk, not a good day. So that's the point where the experts usually say, in the case of this virus, ride it out. With a virus, you can't take an antibiotic, right? That's for bacterial illnesses and infections. So I called the doc on the Monday of that week. They took notes. They said, hydrate, rest. If you need to take something for the fever and the body aches, acetaminophen. If it gets dramatically worse, you can call to the hospital or the urgent care where you are. Nancy, she just said Rachel's my coronavirus hero. I feel like that's such an odd title that I accept with gratitude.
Hey man, take what you can get.
I'll make a little crown and it'll be like the shape of the virus, you know?
It'll have like Corona beers sticking up.
It'll look
as
like
the
little
points.
antennae. That's good too. And it's refreshing. As you build it, you get to drink each beer. So I still have a little lingering cough, but now I feel like it's the Zoolander cough. Like, I got the black lung pop. That's what I have now. 6 weeks out though. So I'm mostly normal at 6 weeks since the onset of symptoms. Long story short, in the middle, when the symptoms got really nasty, my husband and I called ahead to urgent care. They said, yes, sounds like you have COVID-19. Come in. There's a long process. Should you ask, I can bring you into. But they eventually waved us through to the testing tent. I had to get a flu test because they run a flu test. And if it comes back positive, then they, at this particular hospital, will say it's likely it's the flu. We're not going to send out a COVID test. But if it comes back negative, then they send out your COVID swab. They did that for me. They said it'll be 5 to 10 days before your results are received. And those of you who've read the post by now, they lost my test. So
I'm getting stressed just thinking about it.
yeah, it doesn't feel great. The worst, maybe not the worst part. The worst part is it was lost. That's the worst part. But the tragically funny part of it is that I was having tons of calls with the nurses and the head of nursing at urgent care and all these people 13 days after the test was taken to figure out why there were no results in the system yet. And when they eventually told me the test is missing, it was April 1st. And that part of my brain is like, is this a joke? It's April Fool's Day. Are they just with me? Are they, and here we are. I've heard from lots of people who similarly have had their tests lost. something that the head of urgent care expressed to me.
Right.
I wasn't the first test to go missing, and there are a lot of others as well. So at this point, I'm on the recovery. I have been for a number of weeks now. I'm feeling mostly normal, and I am awaiting an antibodies test.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that one is available to a lot of people soon, so that we know if we have some antibodies. There's no knowing if that protects us fully from getting the virus again, but also if I were to get it back and it's like, yep, you have the antibodies, then I can donate plasma to people who are currently fighting the virus in the hospital.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous story. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I would have, like I said, a lesser person like myself would have lost their minds.
It was really maddening.
Yeah.
By the time I was in a place where I felt available to share my story, I had had some time to sit with it. And there are a lot of people who are travelers who are listening in. They will know, and anybody else who doesn't travel, there are certain things that are out of your control. And it takes tons of energy to live in a space where you're frustrated or you're trying to get back control when it's already beyond you. So I was really frustrated, disappointed. I was in disbelief. And then there came a time where I realized there's nothing that I can do or say or feel to make the test reappear.
Yeah.
And I need all of the bandwidth that my body has to get better. Yusuf Ali chimes in, stay home. Yeah. If you have the capacity, thank you for adding that in the comments. If you have the capacity to stay home, if you're a non-essential worker and you are able to stay home, you're protecting yourself, because even if you're young and healthy, you could get really sick, as I've learned. And also the people you love, the people in your community, they need you to do that. That's your job now.
That's the scariest thing is the fact that you could be young and healthy. I mean, unfortunately you got really sick, but like a lot of people are asymptomatic or have very little symptoms, and you know, they think they're invincible. Even, you know, at 20, 30, 40, you know, even 50 years old, you think you're invincible because all you hear is like 70 and 80-year-old people are dying, but that's not the case. It's a lot of people. And, you know, it's crazy. The testing situation, it drives me bonkers that it's not more of a priority, not just with the administration, but like just in general, because how else are you supposed to move past this with the absence of a vaccine? You have to identify the positives, because people, you know, who are asymptomatic can just be walking around like no big deal and getting other people sick. And that's how this is going to continue to go around. It drives me mad. And, you know, like you, I was traveling a lot. You know, I was in China and Japan in November, and, you know, who knows if I was exposed. I was about 150 miles from Wuhan. And, you know, looking back on it now, I never had a symptom in my life. And then in February, mid-February to March 12th, when I got back to New York, I was in Europe for 3.5 weeks. And, you know, I was in Germany. That they say like 70% of the population is going to be infected. I was supposed to be in Italy, you know, and I was out. I was at a soccer game, a Bayern Munich game, 90,000 people, you know, and I was doing things, and I was at bars and restaurants. And, you know, I went there for ITB in Berlin, you know, which was canceled. And it's just madness. And I wanted to get a test. You can't get a test. You know, I probably could have forced the issue that I was traveling and stuff like that, but not one time did I ever had a symptom. But I've literally been sitting in my apartment, with the exception of taking my dog out and going for like exercise walks. But I have like mask, gloves, the whole full PPE thing, and I don't talk to anybody. I don't see anybody except on this thing, you know.
Yeah. Thank you. Internets. My husband is an example of somebody that we think is highly likely to have gotten the virus and not shown symptoms, because he and I were quarantining together.
Right.
He was taking care of me when I was the most sick, making sure that I was hydrated and that if I needed anything, I was okay. He was the one taking me to the urgent care for the test. And so we didn't completely manage to isolate from one another.
Right.
And yet he didn't show any symptoms. So we're the same age, we're equally active. He wasn't traveling where I was. And there's some speculation among some experts that how sick you get is dependent on what's called viral load. So the amount of exposure, the amount of particles or germs you're exposed to. But I was pretty damn sick. So I would assume his viral load was high too, because I was the plague for a minute there, lying on the couch for like 2 weeks.
Human plague.
Yeah. So he didn't get symptoms, He um, could very well be an instance of somebody who's a silent carrier.
Mhm.
And if he didn't have any idea and wasn't observing social distancing, he could be out and about just hanging out, going to the grocery every day, sharing all the germs and not know it. That is common.
Yeah.
So testing for antibodies, it's hoped that that's one way of figuring out who might be safer from the
Right.
virus. Again, we don't know, and I'm not a doctor or medical expert, so we can't say that yes, having an antibodies test means you're safe, you're good. Like go lick the subway railings.
Don't do that. In New York yesterday, actually, they came out with like a antibody test. I don't know. They say it's like 90% accurate or something like that, and 90% is pretty good unless you're the 10%. But I don't know. I want to get it, and I will get it at some point. I just feel like at this point, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not seeing anyone. I'm not doing anything. I think I'm gonna just let it evolve a little bit further. If they start opening stuff up, like really opening stuff up, then I would probably be the first one in line to get it. But I want to make sure it's accurate because I see all these people on Facebook and stuff like that being like, oh, I got the antibodies test. And one of my buddies, two of my actually good friends had it and recovered and both donated plasma since then.
Yep.
And, they're like, oh, we got the antibodies test. We're basically immune. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know that. I mean, and you don't know that. And that's the whole problem with this whole thing is nobody seems to really know anything.
Right. And we're doing our best. I do think that it's remarkable to think about the number of people who are fighting or have fought this virus, who've gotten over it. Because if you think about other living systems around the world, whether it's trees or grasses, there are kind of webs that are connected. There are root systems and things like that. They communicate with each other. They can actually share resources in really amazing ways. And certainly humans can too, but we're not connected physically to one another. So the fact that all of these individual people's bodies are figuring out how to fight something they've never seen before and win is extraordinary to me. I'm like, good job, body. I do not give you enough credit. I really don't. I take for granted the things that I participate in on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Because, we all get in our heads. We're like, I got to do this and do that and go here and take care of this person or whatever. We don't think about our bodies are carrying us there and they're getting it done. And we don't usually show a lot of love. It's remarkable that people's bodies are figuring out how to fight this thing. That doesn't mean we know a whole lot about it or that antibodies tests are the answer. I mean, I think until we have a vaccine, we won't really be in a spot where we can say people are protected. And we would need to get a vaccine to everybody around the world. But I'm still hopeful that people are resilient, and especially when working together. There are so many beautiful stories of people collaborating and helping, whether it's donating plasma or delivering groceries to elders in their community. There's this guy, Captain Tom. Have you heard about Captain Tom in the UK?
No.
You should hear about him. He is a guy who's 99 right now. He's turning 100 next week.
Wow.
He's a veteran. And actually, if you go to my stories, my Instagram stories, or any of my social profiles, I just posted about it because it's a really feel-good story. So Captain Tom is a veteran, and he wanted to raise money for the NHS, which is the UK's national health system. He wanted to raise £1,000 British pounds to support NHS by doing 100 laps around his garden with his walker. He was raising money. By now, people have heard about it. It's gone viral. It's been all over the news. He's raised over 30,000 British pounds. I mean, 30 million British pounds, excuse me. And not only has he raised 30 million British pounds, he then collaborated in a cover of the song You'll Never Walk Alone.
Yeah, Liverpool. Yeah, I know it well. Yeah.
He shot up the British charts and then the Billboard charts. And as of today, he is #1 on the Billboard 100 a week away from his 100th birthday.
Wow.
And
I know what I'm Googling as soon as we get off.
It's so good. Over 800,000 people have contributed, including Duke of Cambridge and like The Weeknd, the musical artist. He was neck and neck for #1. And then he tweeted in the final hours, like, everybody has to buy this single. Go download it. He needs to be number one. So
Somebody's saying it's 30 million pounds. Holy shit. That's unbelievable.
He wanted 1,000, and he's done all 100 laps, which is a lot to ask of a 100-year-old body, you know.
It's unbelievable. I'm gonna go, and I actually love that song, even though I hate Liverpool FC. That's like their song, Jerry and the Pacemakers. I'll be sure to download that. That sounds amazing.
So great. And I see people chiming in the comments too who are familiar with the story, where one person's like, oh, he's already raised 8 million pounds. Oh no, wait, actually it's gone up a lot. It's already 30 million pounds. So that's one of those examples of people coming together and working as a unit that I think are giving us all hope and sanity right now. What's giving you hope right now, Lee?
You know, honestly, I mean, I live in New York City. I live right in Manhattan, and I live right next to one of the biggest hospitals in the country, and you know, the #1 hospital in New York City. And every night at 7 o'clock, open up the window, and people, you know, banging stuff, screaming, yelling, clapping, and it's nice. It's nice. And, you know, again, I've lived in New York a long time. I was here. I mean, I worked in the World Trade Center. I've been through 9/11, Sandy, you know, the blackout, like just everything. And New Yorkers are tough people, but and we always come together and we get it. You know what I mean? So I know that New York will get through this, but at the same time, I just wish I had more faith in the federal government response at the moment, and that's been a big issue, and it's just so counterintuitive to what everyone, like the regular people, are doing, and even local and state governments mostly, and it's just frustrating. So, you know, it's funny, we talk about you know, when there's a vaccine. You know, there's no vaccine for the flu, so, and it's, you know, been around for hundreds of years, you know, so I am not, you know, I'm a New Yorker, so I'm a little pessimistic about certain things, even though I'm optimistic about most. I don't know that there's going to be a vaccine, which is why there's got to be kind of a level ground. And that's why testing is so important, because there's no, you know, people are like, oh, 18 months there's going to be a vaccine. Oh, really? You know that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that. So for me, there has to be testing to identify the positive. The social distancing needs to continue because it's clearly working. The curve is clearly flattening and going down, but we need to keep it that way. And in order to do that, it's the asymptomatic people that are the most dangerous, because they're the ones that will infect everyone else without knowing it and without trying. So why I'm hopeful, and obviously it's getting better right now. I don't know that there's not going to be a second, third, fourth wave that might be worse. And what are we going to do? Shut down the entire planet again? You know what I mean? So it's like, the sickening thing to me is weighing the value of human life and health versus, like, you know, economic wealth and jobs and everything else. But it's a realistic thing that we have to think about and talk about. I mean, how many people are out of a job? I mean, look at the travel industry, decimated. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, I always say I have a lot of time on my hands, and normally I'm super busy, like constantly, and I literally have nothing to do, you know, because there's no work right now. You know what I mean? I'm like inventing stuff to do, and like started writing a book and this and that, which is great. You know, you're doing things you've always kind of meant to do, but at the same time, it's scary because we don't know how long this is going to continue, you know?
That's why people are up in arms, literally, about reopening in places where they're having protests. And there's the part of our brains that goes, are you crazy? This is a pandemic. You're all going to get sick if you're protesting and you're all together and congregating. But also, certainly, we can understand how traumatizing losing all work is, especially if you've got mortgages, kids to feed, families to take care of. So weighing one versus the other, there's no easy outcome. People will suffer either way. And that's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. The crazy thing is, we keep saying like the new normal. It is absolutely new for us to be locking down the global economy or restricting movement and dealing with illness like this on a global scale. There have been other pandemics in our lifetime, like SARS. And at the same time, this was the normal for people before us. Like, until modern history, people had to navigate stuff like this all the time. Their societies weren't as interconnected, but they had to deal with this in their own communities, in their own regions, consistently throughout human history. So it is remarkable to live in a time where we can collaborate to try to make it better on a global scale, and we can really step up and say, okay, it might be a while before we have a vaccine, but at least we have the capacity to do the research in the labs, because 100 years ago or 200 years ago or whatever, we'd all be having a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And you know, somebody talks about healthcare. That's another issue. You know, it's like, you know, we don't want to overwhelm the healthcare system. And, you know, when people get sick, can they afford to pay? You know, you keep hearing the government say, oh, it's, you know, it's not going to bankrupt you to get coronavirus or whatever. But then also, you know, it's just, I hate talking about this. It's like, it's so frustrating, you know what I mean? Because there's just so many underlying issues that this touches on. And like, you know, you can't even see your family. Like, you know, I have family in their 70s who would love to go see right now. You know what I mean? My cousin-in-law, I don't know what that is, like the guy who married my cousin.
Mm-hmm.
His mother recently passed away, and the family couldn't even go to the hospital, you know what I mean, because of coronavirus. So she died alone. I mean, how horrible is this? You know what I mean? And but this is the new norm. I know somebody who just had a baby, like a preemie at like 7 months or whatever, and the mother and father either had two choices, right? They could stay in the hospital basically for like a month while they took care of the baby in the incubator or whatever. You know, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but they would have had to stay in the hospital because they couldn't come and go because of the virus. So they lasted a couple weeks, and then I guess they just got fed up of sleeping in a hospital. So then they went home, so they can't even see their baby until it's ready to leave the hospital. This is crazy stuff. You know, people are having funerals over FaceTime, like weddings over FaceTime. It's madness.
The thing I will offer is how remarkable it is that we can have funerals over FaceTime
Better than
or
nothing.
over live stream.
Yeah.
Because it's brutal and terrible to be in that situation in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
but it's certainly better than the alternative, which is no one can watch the service, no one can pay their respects even virtually, because it's so recent that we have all of this modern technology that allows us to keep in touch. If this were, let's say, 15 years ago and everybody were quarantined, my Nana, who's at this point 92, let's say all else equal, she's still 92, but we don't have FaceTime and we don't have Skype and stuff. She would be alone in a house in Ohio, talking to no one at any point. Nana is FaceTiming.
Yeah.
Nana is on the FaceTime. I mean, it's usually like this. She's like, are you there? You know, she's amazing. She's amazing. The thing is, as a 92-year-old, wanting to learn the technology, being game to adapt, that is remarkable about her, but also about humanity as a species. We adapt. So that's what we're doing now. We're figuring out our new quote unquote normal, our ways of interacting, staying sane. Some days we're going to feel bummed, just want to eat cake, and that's fine. But other days, we can get Nanas on the FaceTime and be like, thank God, this is the era we're alive in. Whoever your God is.
Rachel Rudwall is one of my favorite people, by the way. She is just awesome. Rachel, one of my best friends, Matt Sislin, he says he needs more Rachel Rome's positivity in his life. So Matt and I and a bunch of our other friends, we do a lot of these like virtual happy hour things. And like, honestly, it's just so much fun because it keeps you sane. And, you know, we just sit there drinking scotch, making fun of each other. You should come on and like talk shit to my friends. They would love that.
Yeah. I grew up with brothers. Talking shit is like totally my bag, as long as I can drink bourbon, because
Absolutely.
Sometimes scotch tastes like licking a campfire. Just saying. I'm just saying.
It's just a little peatier than bourbon. That's all.
His peatier. Yes.
All right. So let's talk about fun stuff now. So, for those of you guys just joining us, Rachel Rudwall, Rachel Romes, is an Emmy-nominated travel host, producer. She does everything. Her and I did a commercial together for TripIt a bunch of years ago. That's how we met, and we've been friends ever since. We do like breakfast catch-ups in LA when she lived in LA, and then she mysteriously moved to Oregon on Christmas, and I just found out about it about 35 minutes ago. And anyway, she has traveled to like a ton of places. I mean, you're super well traveled, and so let's just kind of go, like, what are some of your favorite regions, not necessarily countries, to travel to, and what kind of things do you get up to? Because I know you're super into nature like me.
Nature is my happy place. That's the answer. If there's nature, I would like to participate, please. I grew up in Ohio, and in the Midwest, there's lots of agricultural land. So I grew up in an area that was green and a lot of open space. And so nature feels like home to me, even if it's totally different. Where I grew up is really flat. So that also means that anywhere that's not, my brain is like,
Yeah.
what is this? The earth is not just fields. So for me, the Patagonia,
The best.
the southern edges of Argentina and Chile and in South America, for any of you listening who don't know the region, it's beautiful. See if you could do like a virtual tour right now. I'm sure there are all sorts of ways where you can see the Patagonia, maybe the national parks.
Yep.
I love Antarctica. You've spent a lot of time in the Arctic and the Antarctic. I have as well. I spent a lot of time living and working in the Arctic and Alaska, producing shows, and then up in Svalbard, which is
I love it.
Island archipelago off the coast of Norway. The Antarctic, for me, as someone who runs cold, and I'm like, well, I'm always cold, and I don't think that I like it. When you have the right gear and you go out into a landscape like that, you will be so humbled and so stoked that you get to live in a place that looks and feels and smells like where we are on this earth. I love East Africa because of the wild animals and the big open spaces. And, you know, anybody tuning in, maybe who's from East Africa, that's home, but everyone else, it's the stuff. We grew up with toys of zebras and giraffes, and it's like you're seeing them in real life. Giraffes running is hilarious to me. They look like aliens. Whoever has the Google.com, look up a video, I swear, of giraffes running. You will either think it's elegant and graceful, or you will laugh a lot.
And probably
Maybe
both.
Maybe it's both. Yeah. Another favorite place would be Utah in the United States. It's like Mars, but on our planet. I love British Columbia, Canada, which is the West Coast. Rugged. I've done a number of grizzly tracking assignments up there, and it's just spectacularly beautiful. I love the Sierra Nevada, which is a mountain range that I spent a lot of time backpacking in California. And when you're busy in our modern world, as many of the people chiming in are, it's really... it resets you to disconnect. You might know that because, like, maybe you made a promise to yourself where you set down the phone for a weekend. This, for me, spending time in the backcountry forces it. There's no signal. There's nothing to document for Instagram stories. It's just me in the backcountry for a week or whatever. What fills your coffer, as it were? What gets you really jazzed?
I like a couple different things, but my number one thing is nature. And I'm like you, and I pretty much knew you were going to say a lot of the things you just said, because that's exactly what I would say. And I always say that the three most beautiful regions in the world, like nature-wise, are Patagonia, Alaska, and then like the Himalayan region around like Tibet, Nepal. I mean, it's just sheer perfection, those places. And closer to home, I mean, Utah, the Four Corners region, I mean, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, like these places are so beautiful. And like California and up in Oregon, Wyoming, Montana, and British Columbia and Alberta, people don't realize how lucky we are in North America and US and Canada to have the Western United States and Western Canada and all the way up to Alaska. It's some of the best, most beautiful places in the world. And we take it for granted. And I always say I enjoyed going to every national park more than I enjoyed going to every country, because there was like 2 national parks I didn't like, where there was a lot of countries I didn't really want to be in, you know.
There's an account. Oh man, I wish I could remember the name right now. It's I'm gonna have to find it for you, for all of you. It's illustrations of 1-star Yelp reviews of the national parks. If anybody knows it and wants to drop it in the comments, it's escaping me right now, but I follow it. Subpar parks. Subpar parks.
Okay.
So look it up on Instagram.
I will.
Because there's this woman who's an illustrator who can't believe, like I'm sure many of you can't, that there would be anybody who would give a 1-star review to a national park. They're amazing. So she took the best parts of these 1-star reviews, like, ew, too sandy. And then she'll do an illustration of like White Sands National Monument, or nothing but bugs and gray rocks. And it's Yosemite.
Yeah.
How can you do a 1-star review? I don't know, but subpar parks will bring you much joy.
Yeah, like you go to like Teddy Roosevelt National Park, which is famous for buffalo, and be like, there were all these big buffaloes around. Like I was like scared.
Did you read the name? Yeah, and someone is asking in the comments here, does hiking, here, where are we? Ryan Cerrone? Ryan Cerrone, does hiking count as social distancing? It does if it's allowed in your region. So a lot of parks are closed right now. National parks are closed. A lot of state parks are closed because they don't want to encourage crowding, right? But there are going to be places that are still allowing the park systems to stay open. So yes, as long as you're following social distancing rules and the law, definitely counts.
Caroline Avery says that giraffes are the only animal that sheds tears when it's sad. I had no idea. Interesting.
I'm not crying. You're crying, Caroline.
Hey guys, by the way, if you have any questions, just throw them down there. We'll get to the questions in a second. And we're just talking just travel right now. So any questions you have for me or Rachel, just shoot them down there. But yeah, all those places are so nice. And Patagonia, like there's so many good hikes. Like everyone knows kind of Torres del Paine, you know, which is incredible. Really, it is. But like Fitzroy and some of these other hikes, like glacier hikes, like El Chalten, Calafate, you know, down into like Punta Arenas area and up in Bariloche. I mean, it's just perfect. It's so nice, and there's so few people there. It's wonderful.
El Chalten is one of the favorite towns that I've ever visited. I went maybe, gosh, it would have been like 2013. And I went to go do some solo trekking around Fitzroy, which you mentioned. So I was going to be trekking in the Patagonia, and of course got food poisoning, because once you've traveled that far to the end of the earth with a specific goal, something's going to swoop in and really mix it up for you. So I got food poisoning. I was just looking out the window, distressed at the peaks that I was like, I'll never know you. And I ended up so sick that I went down to the little inn front counter and said, you know, I was like, if I don't come out in a few days, I'm dead. Call my family. You know, and you feel so lonely when you're that sick. And I don't know if it's true of everyone, but I revert to my child brain where I just want my mom.
Right.
I'm like, someone take care of me. So I went down, I told the front desk, and there was a couple that overheard. And then this guide overheard, and this guide was like, quickly to the kitchen. And he sits me down, and he's a guy who is from Peru, and he's a native guide in Peru, and he does running tours of the Inca Trail.
Oh, wow.
Ultra running. And he makes me this special tea, not coca tea if you're going to ask. Makes me a special herbal tea. And then the couple basically adopted me. They were like, we got you. When you're ready to eat again, we're going to buy you white rice and cheese and Gatorade. And so it was one of those instances where nothing went the way that I had hoped or planned or dreamed all the time planning this trip. And yet I ended up with this new family, and now they live in Buenos Aires. So like I went through and had lunch with them, and my friend Stephanie, who was chiming in on the comments earlier, she and I had cakes with this lady in Buenos Aires. And like,
that's pretty cool.
I think with travel, you learn to adapt, which is one of the superpowers that humans can have. Also, without travel, maybe you work in the medical field and you have to adapt every single day. If you're a teacher, you got to adapt. So adaptability is one of those things. And I'm convinced that everything in life is either a good experience or a good story later.
I agree with that. Most of the bad experiences end up being your best stories. Like,
yeah. If it's both, if it's a good day and a good story, you win.
Yeah. It's funny how that works. And I second that, man. Getting food poisoning far away by yourself is the worst. It's just awful. The only thing worse than
Mhm.
food poisoning is getting seasick. And
Yeah, because
oh
it
god,
doesn't ever go away.
oh my god, it's just a
It just
nightmare. And
stays
people
with
always are
you.
like, why don't you like going on boats? I'm like, have you ever been seasick? Clearly not. So
No, I had to do for Antarctica. I did the behind the ear
uh,
patch. It's
did
the
that work?
only thing that has ever been effective for
Really?
me. My Nana, same one who FaceTimes and is in Ohio. She's like, well, of course we know why you get seasick. It runs in the family. She said, I get seasick if I set foot in a canoe.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's asking your thoughts on Portugal. Have you? I assume you've been to Portugal.
Yes, but not in a very long time. So I went to Portugal in 2006. I was studying in Spain
Hmm.
and then did a bunch of travels on my own after wrapping out my studies there, and that included Portugal. So I went to Lisboa, I went to Sintra, I went
Well
to,
done.
I don't know if I'm going to say it correctly, Viana do Castelo. I think I remember it sounding like a mix. So Portuguese from Portugal sounds kind of like if Spanish and Russian
Right,
had a bebe.
baby.
And then like from Brazil, it's more like a singing song. It's like uma cidade. I don't know what they're saying, but you can just kind of bounce to it.
It sounds cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like listening to Italian people talk really fast. You're like, I have no idea what you're saying, but I like it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So someone comments below, your Nana, the amazing photographer. I loved her cruise pictures. I took Nana on a trip in Europe last summer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yes. It's what's also awesome is her sense of humor.
Yeah.
One day I was like, Nana, what is this? And I was looking at her phone. She's like, what's what? And I'm like, you took 500 photos, and you know, a burst photo on an iPhone where you
Yeah,
push the button for a long time and it
yeah.
just brrr. She
Right.
took 500 burst photos of her pocket. And she's like, I'm working on my photography. Rachel, that is my dark room. Ooh.
That'll kill your storage capacity.
500 burst photos of her pocket, her
Yeah.
dark room.
That's awesome, man. Somebody was, I forget who, Libston is asking about nostalgia. Is that hitting you hard right now? I mean, obviously you've been dealing with a lot of stuff. I know for me personally, it has been because I'm not traveling. I'm not really doing anything. So I'm getting nostalgic for almost anything like sports, friends, travel, food in other places besides delivery or, you know, from the pantry. So,
Yeah.
and going through old photos is always something most people who travel do. I mean, I do it on planes and stuff like that. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah, I feel like nostalgia is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
It spirits you away to another place and time, and you have a beautiful moment remembering, and then you feel that pit of your stomach kind of drop where you go, oh, I wish I were there. Like you, I'm feeling nostalgic about everything. Sometimes I just feel nostalgic about like the chips that I ate last week that I don't have anymore. I'm like, oh, the time I had potato
We
chips.
want what we
So
can't have, always.
exactly.
Yeah.
So whether I want to be on the other side of the world, I was feeling really nostalgic for Bhutan. You mentioned the Himalayas. Nostalgic for Bhutan. But I also feel nostalgic for just taking walks with people I like, or I felt really nostalgic for my favorite Mediterranean place in Los Angeles that was at the end of the block. It's not necessarily things that are far flung
Yeah.
or quote unquote exotic to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just anything that's not available. And I think that's probably a part of the human condition, especially right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's a lovely thing that we can dive into that as long as we don't get trapped into the thinking that where we are right now doesn't have potential to.
Yeah, I mean, I miss simple things, just like being able to walk outside without a mask on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like being able to play with other people's dogs, you know, and chit chat and just sit at a bar and watch a bartender make me an old fashioned and talk to him about what he's doing. That's what I like to do. And yeah, I mean, going to Europe sounds great right now, or going to Argentina or something like that would be wonderful. But that's not really what I'm missing. It's just the basic things, you know, because we've really been broken down as people in the past, you know, 2 months now or whatever it's been. It's absolutely crazy. Somebody was asking you what's your favorite place to photograph, by the way, Jessica Bruce, who's apparently a photographer.
Good question, Jessica. For me, there are a couple of different scenarios. One is landscapes where there is someone that puts it in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of photos like this on Instagram nowadays. I call those photos butts with views because it's usually some girl who's like this. I don't know if you can tell, my butt is out that way. And then there's a view in front of me, and my hair might be blowing in the wind. Who knows?
Yeah.
Butts with views. There are lots of gorgeous landscape photographs on Instagram of
Right.
a little tiny person with a big grand landscape. That has been something that I've loved for a long
Yeah.
time. I think I just appreciate the perspective of how tiny we are.
Yeah.
I can think of one photo that I took in 2008, and I was on a road trip across the Southwest, and I went to White Sands National Monument, which I mentioned earlier, and it's these rolling white dunes, and at sunset there was that band of oranges and reds across the horizon.
Right.
And into what was my frame with my camera, into frame walked a monk in this long orange robe,
In
and
White
he was from
Sands?
Southeast Asia. And it's just, I mean, it was like my brain melted. It
That's
didn't make any
crazy.
sense, but he put it all in perspective,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And he tied the room together, kind of like Lebowski. Another thing I love are the human moments in cultures that are unfamiliar to me that I feel grateful to be invited into in the first place.
Right.
It could be a shopkeeper who's selling something. It could be a family spending a moment together at a park, someone sitting on a front stoop. Those really good human moments where I am permitted to just exist in that space.
Right.
That feels really lovely.
That's
What about
awesome.
you, Lee?
You know, I like nature photography the most. I'm not big on like being in my photos. I like to take, you know, I'm being a couple, but I like to take pictures of stuff. I like, I'm not like super creative or like abstract or anything like that. I just like straight nature, but like from nice angles and good light. Like Patagonia, like for instance, Fitzroy. I think my favorite photo that I've ever taken was at the top, you know, of that glacial alpine lake, and then the peaks behind it. Same at Torres del Paine. I mean, unbelievable. Like you can't even fathom how nice it is. Plus, you've been hiking for hours and hours straight uphill, like to get there. I know when you get there, you're like, oh my god, this is so amazing. And national parks in America, Canada, really everywhere. Just in Bhutan, you mentioned. I mean, it's you know, it's funny when you get up to the what do they call it, the tiger's nest.
Tiger's Nest Monastery.
You've seen the photo a million times, and everyone has the same photo, but it's still you take it a million times and it doesn't get old ever.
Yeah, it's equally beautiful every time. There's a photo that I'm thinking of that I posted on Earth Day this week, of these dunes in the Sahara in Morocco, and this beautiful blue sky, and the dunes are so orange and they're kind of layered and shadowed because it's late afternoon light. And to me, when I look at it, it looks like a painting. It looks abstract, and that's just nature doing her thing, being like, sup world.
Yeah. Desert scenery to me. I mean, you mentioned the Southwest before, Utah, Arizona, but the Sahara, and then Namibia, and then Bolivia, like places like that with just desert scenery and the contrast between the sky and then the sand and whatever else is picture is just incredible.
Anybody who's listening, and if you're dreaming big time about one specific place, drop it into the comments. It would be great to hear where you're dreaming of. There's so much out there. I think one of the cool things about being alive, at first, when I realized this, when I was a bit younger, it was traumatizing and really sad. I was like, oh no, I couldn't see it all. There's not time. Like that, I can't. And then that became really freeing, because that means that our whole lifetime can be spent in pursuit of knowing and experiencing. You'll never exhaust all the possibilities to see and participate. That's cool.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I have this quote. I'm a big golfer as well, and that's like one of the things that I love to do. And I always say that travel is kind of like golf. It's a hobby you can do your whole life, and it's never the same twice, no matter how many times you play the same course. And that's just a metaphor for traveling, because it never gets old. Even if you go to, you know, London 25 times, it's always a different experience. You meet different people, stay different places, eat different. You know, it's that's what's great about it. And there's some good spots there. Yeah, Tuscany, Greece, Italy, of course. Somebody was asking.
Namibia.
Someone's asking before about India. I'm assuming you've been to India. What do you like there?
So I spent about a month traveling in India, and just over the course of one trip.
Mm.
I went and visited some friends in Chennai in the southeast, and then which is in Tamil Nadu province, and then cut west by a train to a place that my personal favorite was this place that was nestled in the mountains, and it's called Udi.
Mm.
Uttarakhand, I think is the full name. Forgive my pronunciation. It's full of tea plantations and there are eucalyptus trees, and so everything smells good and it's green, and there are like people growing carrots and people who are harvesting the tea leaves, and it felt really slow paced compared to the rest of the India that I visited, which I loved. And then we went over to Kochi in Kerala, and then went up the west coast to Goa, eventually to Agra and to Udaipur and Jaipur, and then Delhi. And Udaipur is really magical as well. So if you have been, you'd be familiar, but if you haven't, look up pictures of Udaipur, India. It's got this beautiful palace in the middle of a lake, and then the city surrounding has these windy kind of cobbled streets that reminded me in some ways of what you might experience in or picture of Europe. But with all of the bright colors of people in saris and the amazing smells of Indian food, and it's awesome.
Yeah, India is it's one of those places. It's case sensitive. You know, you'll get it one way or the other. You either love it or hate it, and sometimes you're in the middle. But usually you sway one way or the other. And you know, I've been to India I think 6 times. Probably spent about 5 or 6 months of my life there altogether. And you know, sometimes I hate it, sometimes I love it, but I keep going back because anytime you go crazy for about a week, then all of a sudden you see like Darjeeling or like the Himalayan region, and you're just like blown away. And by the way, we have 1:15 before Instagram kicks us off. So
we have a person I would like to point out who's from Udi.
Oh yeah.
Someone just chimed in. Patra B is from Udi. That's
awesome.
So crazy to me.
And by the way, that palace that you were talking about in Udaipur, that was featured in the James Bond movie Octopus. I'm a huge James Bond guy, and that's where they filmed it. And so that was the first time I ever really saw India, and that was one of the main reasons I went there. That and Indiana Jones.
Cool. I could eat Indian food every day of my life. And truly, I'm not working on my quarantine body, so maybe I will.
I hear that.
Thanks for the conversation, Lee.
Yeah, dude, you're the best. Thank you. We got 40 seconds, guys. First of all, thank you for all the comments and questions. Sorry we didn't get to everybody, but Rachel, thank you. You're inspirational. You're the best. Your positivity is contagious, and thank you so much. Stay well. Say hi to Todd, and you know, let's do this again sometime. And seriously, be in touch. And thanks for telling me that you moved to Oregon.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And say hi anytime. My last photo of the dunes is on there if you want to feel nostalgic.
All right. Bye, guys. And I'm going to post this in my stories now if you missed any of it, so you can go check it out. Thanks again, guys. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Be safe.
Bye, Lee.
Bye.